Hi kindergartners! Last week we made balance scales to measure weight and find out things that are heavy and light. And this week we're going to keep measuring, but instead of measuring weight, we're going to measure length. And since it is Frog Week, I am going to use lily pads to measure the length of things around my house and my jumps. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to make what you will be measuring with. So since it is Frog Week, I made lily pads using a manila folder. I used a bowl to make the circle and cut out the circle, decorated my lily pad, and I made a few so that I could measure them like this to see how long it is. If you only had enough to make one, you could do it that way and use your finger. But if you have a lot and you have some time to decorate, I would suggest that. The next thing that I did was I got some paper and a marker, and I've already started measuring, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I decided what I was going to measure. So up here at the top it says measuring with lily pads. And it says what? So what am I going to measure? I'm going to estimate or make a guess of how many lily pads long it's going to be. And then I'm actually going to measure it. And this is the actual number. So this is like my guess, and then this is once I've measured and I know actually how long it is. I've decided that the what that I'm going to measure is Parker's jump, Charlie's jump, an Elephant and Piggie book called I'm a Frog, and one of Parker's large coloring books. All right, now we're gonna head outside to do some jumping.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Charlie's gonna do a jump. All right.
I'm gonna jump, and then we're gonna measure to see how far from Charlie that you jump. So stand right here and just do one big jump, okay? 1, 2, 3. All right. Right there.
Each time we jumped, I marked where their feet landed by writing their initial. So there's Charlie's jump for C and Parker's jump for P. Now I'm going to use my lily pads to measure how far they jumped. So I'm measuring Charlie's jump first. That is 1 lily pad. So I'm going to guess, and based on what that 1 lily pad looks like, I started right at the start line, and I'm going to put 1 lily pad right next to another until I get to the C. So I'm guessing that it's going to be 4 lily pads long. So let's actually measure it. So we have 1, 2, 3. So that gets me right to his line. So I was a little bit off. I thought that Charlie's, my estimate was that it would be 4, and it actually is 3. Now I'm going to do the same thing for Parker. So I measured Parker's, and it looks like my estimate was close, but it wasn't quite right. I estimated 6, and he jumped 7 lily pads. And then I recorded that on my chart. So I wrote my estimate before I measured, that I thought that he would jump 6 lily pads, but he actually jumped 7. And I did the same thing with Charlie. So now I'm going to head back inside and measure my book and my coloring book. So I'm back inside, and the next thing that I need to measure is the book. And I made my estimate that I think the book is going to be 2 lily pads because I put 1 lily pad on the book, and it looks like it's going to be 2. So I'm going to measure for real now, or find the actual length. So 1 lily pad, 2 lily pad. Now, it's not quite exact, but I'm still going to call that 2 because if I add another one, it's way over. So it's just a little bit more than 2, but I'm going to call it 2 for my chart. So the book is 2 lily pads long. All right, the last thing that I am going to measure is the giant coloring book. So here is the giant coloring book, and there is 1 lily pad. So before I measure, I want you to make an estimate. How many lily pads long do you think this giant coloring book is? Here's 1 lily pad. And all the lily pads are the same length. So how many do you think it will take to measure the whole coloring book? I'm going to give you a second. All right, my estimate is going to be 5. So I'm going to write that on my chart. Now remember, your chart's going to look different because the things that you decide to measure are going to be different than mine. You don't have Parker at your house. You don't have Charlie at your house. You might have the Elephant and Piggie book, but maybe your lily pad is a little bit of a different size than mine. So it doesn't matter if your lily pad is bigger or smaller than mine. The thing that is important is that your lily pads are all the same size. So my lily pads are all the same size. So now I'm going to measure. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Remember, my guess was 5. 4. All right. Now this is interesting. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I don't have quite 5, but it's definitely more than 4. So I would say that this is about half of a lily pad. So on my chart, and if you measure something that is that same way, that it takes up half of something, this is how you're going to write it. I would say that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half. So here I go. This is how you write it. 4, and then this is the sign for half. So I think that that is 4.5 lily pads long. Have fun measuring length this week. I would love to see your charts that you make of what you measure. Remember, I measured Parker's jump, Charlie's jump, the book, and the coloring book. I made my measuring tool out of lily pads, and I recorded my estimates of how long something was going to be in the actual length. Please send me, Mrs. Fox, Mrs. Scroggum, pictures of you measuring and seeing how long or the length of things around your house.